and then at the end of the meeting, it gets downloaded.
How do I upload it to you?
Upload it to YouTube.
How do I have access to the channel?
The password is pinned in the staff channel.
Okay.
Oh, not LD.
But yeah, I did add my prep from like freshman and sophomore year.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I mean, use some of that on the if we have debate on the social media topic.
Yeah.
Okay, so like abbreviations and stuff.
All right. I think we did well with the first question. To review, non-uniqueness means that the scenario of the disad is inevitable, whereas uniqueness overwhelms the link means that we're too far away from the brink for the link to tip things over, the bright line. So yeah, most of the folks who took all three of you, most of the folks who took it got that one correct.
Praj, is Jonathan doing this or?
I don't know. I just asked him. I think he was just here. I have to ask.
Praj, I can barely hear you.
I don't know. I have to ask him.
Okay, because he did the quiz and he didn't do badly on it.
Yeah, and he was one of the three people. Yeah. Okay.
I'll ask him.
All right. Anyway, the point of knowing the 14 ways to respond is to be able to introduce APA into your debates, so we can move on to the next question. What should a link turn be combined with to change a disadvantage into an advantage for you? So here it's non-uniqueness. Remember that if a disad is still unique for the negative, but you read a link turn, it's not going to be unique for you. I.e., if they're winning that the status quo is good, and you're saying that the plan makes the status quo better, it probably doesn't matter because the status quo is already good. So for a disadvantage to become an advantage, you need to say the status quo is bad and the plan makes things better. So that's why you need non-uniqueness. If you were to read uniqueness overwhelms the link, that would be honestly counterproductive. With an internal link turn, you would be double turning yourself, which you don't want to do. That would give the neg free offense. Impact defense, you can read it with a link turn. That's fine. It's just not a component of turning it into an advantage. All right. Any questions so far? Cool. So a double turn is when you turn two parts of the flow, i.e. a link, internal link, or an impact. So it's bad because, if you do so, then you can just allow the affirmative to concede both, the negative to concede both and have free offense. So if you link turn and impact turn, the negative can concede both of those arguments, and then they just have a free disad. They don't have to answer, basically they have a disad without any defense on it, and it would be really easy for them to win. So the point isn't necessarily just that you're contradicting yourself, quote unquote. It's that you're literally handing the other team free offense. There are 4 responses to link, internal link, and impact level, the way that they're phrased. No X, which is terminal defense, X defense, which is mitigatory defense, X turn, which is offense, and then there's thumper, or no X uniqueness, which says that part of the disad is non-unique, which remember just says that component is inevitable or has already been triggered for some reason or should have been triggered in the past. If the link is being pushed, then that means that he's being pushed by someone else. If the internal link is falling, that means he's falling for some other reason. If the impact is, being on fire, that means he's going to be on fire for some other reason. And that's the way that no X uniqueness, aka thumpers, work.
Yeah, I also think the best way to a good way to explain it is if you have your link chain here, a thumper brings another link chain in here to lead to the same thing from both worlds, if that makes sense. it adds more links onto it.
Yeah, but that's just a link to the status quo, obviously, which is good for the affirmative because then you're saying your link is not unique. So yeah, these are just the examples. You guys did pretty well with these. So yeah, I mean, in this scenario, I just wanted to say like manufacturing strong now is the uniqueness. Decline in manufacturing is the link. Manufacturing affects, the economy is the internal link, and economic decline results in nuclear war is the impact. So saying manufacturing is weak now is saying that things are already bad in the status quo, which is a non-uniqueness argument. Saying, I think that's fairly straightforward. Like that's just what it is. Moving on, yeah. So if the affirmative says that the resolution actually boosts manufacturing, here you're taking the link, which is that the resolution hurts manufacturing, and turning it, right? You're saying that the opposite of it's true. So you should get offense there. So that would be a link turn. Yeah, okay. You have anything? Okay, sorry. Yeah, I didn't realize you scrolled. So now the affirmative would say they would respond by saying that manufacturing has little effect on the overall economy. That would be internal link defense, again, because manufacturing leading to economic decline is the internal link. So saying that internal link is not valid or is improbable is defense against that part of the disadvantage. Next, the argument that the affirmative makes in the quiz is that economic decline is unlikely to result in war. So again, economic decline resulting in war is the impact. So we're saying that that's unlikely. So that's impact defense. And if Sid, you want to continue scrolling, we've got our final one, which is the AF would respond by saying that economic decline would actually be good because it solves global warming. So that would be an impact turn. And that would be, in this case, it would just say that the thing that you say is bad is not bad. That's what the first part says, impact defense. It's actually good. And that would be what the impact turn says. So yeah, that's impact turn. And finally, this one was a little tricky. But if you look at the 5 arguments, I think most of you got this. The reason that it would be a bad idea is that it contains a double turn. You're turning yourself at both the link and the impact level. So just to show practically how the negative could respond to this, they could concede non-uniqueness. They could concede the link turn, saying that the resolution hurts manufacturing. They would have to answer the internal link defense, saying that manufacturing isn't key to the economy. But then they can concede that economic decline doesn't cause war, and they can concede that economic decline causes or solves global warming. Once they've conceded all of those arguments and answered the one, they will have a disad, which basically says the affirmative causes the economy to grow, but economic decline is the only way to solve global warming. So that's a reason that the affirmative is bad. They cause global warming. So yeah, it's a double turn, and it wouldn't be a good idea to read all 5 of these responses. But if you just left out one of the turns, it would make a pretty typical response to a disadvantage, I think.
Okay, cool. Any questions on the quiz or what we went over yesterday? Anything?
Cool. Should I go be a responsible adult?
Yeah, we'll just cover like verbatim
Yeah.
Google Drive and stuff like that.
Cool.
Where do you have to go, Rajiv?
To PF1.
Because Felix is the only adult in his room, and he's not
Yeah.
a responsible adult.
Got it.
So who here, does everybody here have Microsoft Word?
Probably not. No.
Okay.
It's LD. We can use Talks. We'll use Drive.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just wondering like what we need to go over. Emily, do you have Word? Okay, cool. That's fine. That's because we'll just go over the same stuff.
Do we want to
Okay.
do the case writing presentation or no?
We'll do that after because I won't wait for Rajiv to come back for that.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll just go over like yeah, just like technology stuff right now.
Okay.
Okay, so the big things you want to do.
Yeah, you just want me to start talking. Oh, you're screen sharing. Okay.
Yeah, so the two big Chrome extensions I would get are these two, Site Creator and Card Cutter. So with Site Creator, what happens is, shoot, am I still? No, I'm not screen sharing. Hang on.
No, you're not.
So I accidentally hit the stop share. Okay, so if I go to like this site, okay. So it's an article from the Wall Street Journal about federal jobs guarantee. And if the extension is working, do you see this right here? It gives me like a citation, the author, the date, the article name, and the URL. And it also gives like a grade on how much information is available. Sometimes I think the thing that I found that doesn't load the most automatically is the date, but you can just fill that in. So yeah, that's something useful to have. For that, you just have to look up Site Creator Chrome extension, and then just download it. And then the other one, good one, is Card Cutter. So this is good if you don't have verbatim. So what you do is, if I need this much evidence for a card, I'll go into Card Cutter, federal jobs, that article title. Drag it. Honestly, for dates, most of the time, unless
It's
it's
not
like
even
a super-
2019.
What?
It's a 2018 article.
Oh yeah, my bad. For a lot of dates, for a lot of dates, unless it's like a super modern, like really changing thing, just having the date is enough. Like of course having the full date is good practice. This is just for time's sake. And then I put the text block in there, and I hit generate, and then it creates this nice formatted card for you. What the tag is? We talked about tags, right?
Not really.
Okay, so a tag is like a summary of what the card will say. So like,
Can I just show them some stuff, Sid?
yeah, sure.
Okay. So in LD, there are really two ways that you can kind of treat LD in the way that you want to write cases. Let's see. I'm going to look at stuff from my freshman year because that would probably be my worst work. These aren't mine. These are Jeeves. Which year did I enter high school?
2018, 2019 was my freshman year, but you can use the November, December cases because
Okay.
those were really bad.
Yeah. So here's an example of one type of style of LD case. And I think I showed you guys this one before. And it's really, you just kind of do the like author's last name and then the year and then the quote. You don't really have to do this whole like policy-esque card cutting thing where you're just like, Fagan 17 explained this thing, and then the quote. Jackson 11 says, then the quote. And then somewhere else in another doc, you can have the actual like full article or links to it in case your opponent like asks to see it. But that very, very, very rarely happens. So almost always, this is just plenty in an LD round, especially like a local traditional round. However, the method that Sid is showing you is much more analogous to policy debate. It is something that I know he's transitioned.
There's nothing in there.
Oh, there's nothing in there. Sorry, yeah. Wrong year. I'm used to the last folder being the most recent year. Transition to almost a more. Oh.
No, I didn't debate that. Go November, December. Jan Feb was
Nukes, right?
the Jan Feb AF was actually, you should show that because it's a good blend.
Either way, we transitioned, or at least Sid has, to a more policy-esque way of writing LD cases, which is a tagline, then the author name, and then the highlighted card. So the way cards are like pieces of evidence, the way they work in policy debate is essentially you have this large excerpt from from an article, so like all of this, and then there's, or let me highlight it, all of this, and then there are different levels of like importance. So like words that like are part of the argument are going to be underlined, and then words that you actually read in the round are highlighted. So if I were reading this card in a round, I would say ending oppression is a prerequisite to achieving equality and requires agency and individual in order to actualize its goals. Arneson 13. If what one embraces is basic capability equality for all, then one is countenancing that there may be non-basic capabilities. So you skip the non-highlighted words, you only read what's highlighted. You do not have to write your cards this way if you don't want to. If you want to do the more basic LB style, that is 100% okay, and it's actually a lot like faster. So if we're only giving you guys like 2 days to like cut a contention, then this honestly might be the sorry, not this way, the other way, where you just do like Arneson 13 says that if what one embraces, if you just want to do that, that's perfectly fine. If you want to do this, cutting a full card, you can, but it's not at all necessary.
Wait, Jack, can you give me a remote control for a second?
I don't like this, but okay.
Okay. I just want to pull up a case that I wrote this year, which is a good blend, I think.
A good one. Oh, blend. Okay.
This is it, I think. Okay, yeah. So this, I was focusing a lot more on analytics. So you see, I have like Kant. I'm quoting him right there. I'm just doing those quotes right there. But then, like on the framework, it's all just analytics and some quoting directly. And wait, oh, I didn't cut any cards for this. I forgot. Never mind. Let me show a different case then. I'll show the PSAP.
Yeah, honestly, for you guys who are starting LD, this is probably the way you probably want to go, kind of just as author name and then the quote. Praj, and if Sunny comes back, if you guys want to cut it more like policy cards, I think that'd be a really good experience for you guys because you're used to reading, highlighting, and that sort of stuff. And overall, it is more useful to be able to jump around the article and have all the context there in case you need to look back into it.
Jackson,
it's harder.
Can you move your thing which has everybody on it? I want to see what Silas commented on this.
Oh, you can all see that? Or
It just like
black?
comes up as like a blank thing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Just move it to the other side.
I did.
Okay. I was just reading what Silas said. Okay. Yeah. So you see here on the framework, I have, this is very, like, it's very analytic, like this whole thing. Oh, I can't highlight. The first paragraph is very analytic, and it's this big quote from Stanford Encyclopedia. And, it's a lot of analytics here. But then when you get to the contentions, it's cut cards, because I was stealing stuff from Jackson and Rashid's policy back files. And so, yeah. So you can see that you can also just like balance things out however you want. Though also if you do cut cards, you should have you should try to have like a sentence in between your cards, because that helps like, like I think.
I'm joking. For LV, yeah. It's right, yeah.
Yeah, you should have like something you try to, because it just helps give the judge some break instead of just like constantly reading evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
yeah,
that's all.
Any questions about just the general format of how that stuff kind of works? So yeah, you can do it much more like easily. His last name, author last name, the quote, and then chuck the link somewhere at the bottom of your doc so you have it just in case you need it. Or you could go the full policy route. The full policy route can be more useful, as I was telling Praj. As he knows, sometimes your opponent might ask, like, hey, could you give me some extra like information about this evidence? But if all you have in your document is that one quote, you might not be able to find anything extra. But if you did it the policy way, you might be able to look back in the unhighlighted portions and be like, oh, look, here's this like extra warranting, or like this extra statistic that like was part of a list that I didn't use because I needed to list everything, but like I can now say it and like cross-ex to like boost my case. It's up to you guys what you really want to do as far as that goes.
I think also cutting cards. I like for me. I think cutting cards does have a bit of a larger benefit because it helps prevent mishandling evidence as much. Because typically with cut cards, like the rule Rajiv taught me to follow was if you use something in a paragraph, like if you so like if I only need up to here, you include till the end of the paragraph. And so I think having cut cards just lends itself to less mishandling of evidence because people read the whole thing. I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah,
but it's also LD, in which you can essentially mishandle evidence however you want.
Yeah.
So don't purposely do it, but if you need to stretch the truth a bit, I mean, it's not the worst. It's not the end of the world. Yeah.
Can you pull up the case writing presentation and we'll talk about that?
Do you just want to start that? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get to that.
Rajiv also said last night, like anything he would say about research, like you would know. So.
Okay, yeah, like especially for LD, don't worry too much about your research. I mean, it's really important to have good quality evidence, but a lot of the arguments you're going to be making are moral and logical as opposed to evidence-based. No, you do not get remote control. Decline.
No, because what?
Okay. So the way you start by writing a case is that you're going to obviously have to do some basic research first. So the topic lecture that we gave yesterday, just like some background on what a federal jobs guarantee is, that's always important, making sure you have a foundational understanding of the issue. Even if you don't focus on all aspects of it in your case, if your opponent does choose to focus on something different than you do, knowing the different parts about a topic area are really important. Yeah, try to find arguments that are going to fit the topic. Don't try to don't try to just come up with an idea, and if it's not working, stuff it into a case and try to make this convoluted mess that technically works, but it's held together with so much tension that as soon as your opponent cuts one thing, everything just falls apart. Try to make something that stands on its own, that has good support, that's going to work well. Let me see what the chat is.
It's nothing. It's fish being fish. Also, something is there's actually a really interesting podcast that talks about how the topics are selected. The topics are selected with a lot of literature on each side. So the key is just finding that literature. And so you just have to focus on that. You want to focus on finding the literature which talks about it. And really, so Praj, yesterday, you know how when I said the topic, you isn't racism in argument? I think that's something I had done last year in the beginning of this year that I really want us to start getting away from, because we kind of get lazy and try to think of arguments before we do research on the topic. But if you start doing basic research, you see a lot of the arguments that make more sense. So that's just something I kind of want us to start getting away from, of don't do research. Do research before you start thinking of arguments, because that's really important.
I think the main thing there is just that, shoot, what was I going to say? I had something. Start talking, Sid.
Okay. So personally, I think making a case is very intimidating. Pulling up the blank document and being what am I supposed to write is very intimidating. So what we do is typically the week that the topic comes out, the second meeting of it, what we'll do is during practice, we'll go and we'll just write down every single idea we can think of on the board, whether it's a good argument, whether it's a bad argument, whether it's a really hard argument to run, whether it's a really niche thing, we write everything on the board. We started doing this year, and I think it helped a lot because we were able to just brainstorm, and it made it a lot easier for us to write cases this year. And so then from there, once we have this full list of all the possible contentions, we'll kind of start grouping the contentions together on how they could work with different frameworks, or how they could work with each other. And then from there, we come up with frameworks that we could use, and then we start writing. Typically, it's just a lot easier to go with a bottom-up approach with like doing contentions and then framework. Because if you're doing, like we talk about making the arguments fit the topic, not the other way, like finding arguments that fit the topic, you're not making arguments fit the topic. That's really important, because if you go in with a certain framing beforehand, you won't be able to you won't be able to use the right contentions. You won't focus on using the right contentions and then figuring out what framework works for them.
One thing I was going to say, I remember what I was going to say to piggyback off of what Sid was telling Praj earlier, is that there are people out there, experts in every field, who have thought about the topic way more than you're ever going to. There are people who spend years studying federal jobs guarantees, or the impacts of climate change, or like social media use, and like how tech companies evade, like, I don't know, like culpability for what their users post. Like all of these topics, there is someone out there who has devoted years of their life to understanding more about a topic. And because of that, when they write about said topic, they will have the good arguments in their article. So when you do your basic research and you see, oh, hey, this is a really smart person who's written like multiple papers on this subject, they say that this is a reason that a federal jobs guarantee is a good idea. That's probably because they know that there's a lot of like really strong foundational evidence for why that's true, and that they believe is like logically sound, that they believe on its own merits the idea of being good or the idea of being bad. So instead of just going with your initial gut instinct of, oh, I would really like to read this argument on the topic, even just reading like 5 articles, the first thing to pop up on Google when you like view the topic, just that alone, it will really, really help you, because it will allow you to see what other people are saying, and you can piggyback off of that. Because if one person is talking about it, multiple people are probably talking about it. So you can pick and choose your specific evidence when it comes to an argument, instead of trying to think of an argument and then look for the one person in some fringe corner of the internet who says that it's true.
And also, when we're talking about these experts, for policy, you have to go like scholarly articles, looking through that. But policy, you don't really have to do that. Just look at like New York Times, Wall Street Journal. Just look at like news sources, and there'll be a lot of stuff on there. So yeah. So let's talk about. Oh wait, Jackson's going to the next slide. Okay. So I know this is a lot. I just didn't know how to organize this. So understand the topic and history. That's the very basic stuff. That's what we were talking about. Just reading things. Make sure you're reading things on both sides. Understanding the biases behind the research. Understanding them on both sides. Understand the arguments on both sides. And then start looking on Google Scholar and JSTOR. So Google Scholar, everybody knows what that is, right?
No, they almost certainly don't. Okay.
No. I think everybody knows what Google Scholar is.
Who here has even heard of Google Scholar? Silas, have you heard of it?
I have not.
Daniel, have you heard of it?
What's heard of Google Scholar? What? Wait, no.
No, yeah.
What is Google Scholar?
There we go. See, Sid, you vastly.
I
didn't know what it was till I went to camp. Like.
Oh, in like elementary school, I thought they told
All right,
us.
Sid, shut up. Stop flexing.
Okay, well, maybe you went to a cooler elementary school.
Jackson and I went to the same elementary.
You guys went to the same elementary school.
Look at Jackson's most recent search, regime.
Oh, yeah.
That's embarrassing, man.
I was trying to. I was going to search for a new background I could use, but then I ran out of time, so I just had regime in the search bar. I don't know why.
Man.
Okay, Jackson, pull up Google Scholar.
Yeah. So if you go to scholar.google.com, this is essentially Google search, but for scholarly articles. So when people are like, hey, we should write like professionally, like from a university about a thing. So if we're like impacts of economic decline, understanding American economic decline. Yeah.
And then Also,
economic
one,
impacts of growth or decline in urban areas. All of these are going to link to scholarly articles that you can visit, that you can read, that have like a lot of like, I don't know, just like foundational like academic weight behind them. So learning how to use Google Scholar effectively is really good. It's just like, imagine like how you would Google for something in first grade and how you probably Google for the same thing now. You probably understand that you don't type like a full sentence. You try to use certain keywords. Maybe you know some more advanced Google functions, like how to search for specific quotes or exclude certain things in your Google search. The same things apply to Google Scholar, learning how to use it effectively.
can you go back to Google Scholar?
Yeah.
Um, important thing that you can use, so like say this first article is like this, can you go back?
Oh, I thought you wanted me to click on the first
No,
article.
yeah. So say this first article is this like amazing article you find and you're like, this is awesome. I need some more than the article says though. If you go to the cited by, that means these are articles which reference this one. So if you need more, click on the cited by and read through some of those articles. So yeah.
Yeah, if you're also reading like an article or a paper that's like a summary of research in a field, looking at the citation, like not the articles that cite it, but the articles that it cites at the bottom can also be really helpful in understanding where it's gathering its evidence from. Oftentimes, a lot of these articles are hidden behind paywalls. So it's like, oh, pay us like $5 and you can get this scholarly article. And that's where Sci-Hub comes in. This looks like a sketchy website, and it probably is pretty sketchy, but it's also really useful. So you essentially just copy the link of an article that you cannot currently access, you put it in here, and you hope and pray that it spits back out a PDF of the article that you would otherwise have to pay for. It's really useful, and it probably works like 75% of the time.
Sci-Hub is how I sent that article yesterday in the Discord.
Yes, this is just a really useful tool that you will, if you end up doing a lot of research, use quite often.
And also on JSTOR though, if you just create a free account with your email, you get something like it's like 100 free articles to read, which like for LD is a lot. Like I think for me, writing the like stock AF case for this talk, like I wrote 2 stock AF cases for this topic, and I didn't use Google Scholar or JSTOR at all because I just needed a ton of statistics from like the US Census Bureau and then some articles. So like you may not need them, but like for the neg I'm writing, which is like a super like fill dense neg, I'm doing a ton of Google Scholar and JSTOR research. Also, Jackson, by the way, I'm going neg and I'm reading a Tuinar Zahir overview.
Great.
And then all SEP, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy are great sources for cutting cards on philosophy, learning philosophy, or just like understanding it in general.
It'll be the first thing that if I Google like they're like egalitarianism, the second result is Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy right there. You're going to have a lot on the more complex theories and probably something on more obscure theories. So that's really good when you're trying to find a value and value criterion.
If you're running something and we're like, oh, you should use that value criterion, that should be the first place to go to.
Yep. Briefs can help. I don't use them that much. It's essentially just packets of evidence normally put out after the topic is announced. We pay for, I think, Champion briefs this year.
Yes.
So we'll have those on Schoology, assuming we still use Schoology. I don't know. And those will be helpful, but only for topics that have been officially chosen. So if you're doing practice like this, we don't have any briefs. Probably the most, you can go, Sid.
The best thing with briefs is the topic analysis. Because all these companies that put out briefs, they have people who like their job now is literally just being a debate coach, running camps and cutting evidence for briefs. Like that, they're professionals and they've done debate probably through college and high school. So for like 9 years, and they literally will write like 4 or 5 pages, just like breaking down the topic and like potential like strategies they think each side should take. and they give some background on it. So reading those is honestly so helpful.
I'll be completely honest. I've never read a brief, and I don't think it's that helpful.
I think the topic analyses are really helpful.
I think it's a personal preference thing. If you want to read it, read it. If you don't want to read it, don't. We get.
It's more info. It's less background research you have to do.
I've never found them better than actual experts in the field.
Yeah, but like, I'm talking about like, topic just comes out. You want a basic understanding of it. Just going through the topic analyses can help.
It can. Not my thing. If it's your thing, you can do it. Probably the most important thing on the slide, that if you don't already know already, is using quotes and then minus quotes to specify searches. So let's say I Google, I don't know, like bear. I'm probably gonna get like pictures of like brown and black bears, but maybe I don't want black bears. I just want all bears that aren't black. I can do minus and then black, and then I'm gonna get results that are only bears that aren't black. So obviously this is like a not very useful example for debate, but especially if you're searching something and you find that like one keyword keeps showing up and you don't want it to, you're like, oh, I want to look at the impact of economic decline. And like a lot of articles are only talking about like poverty, and you're like, no, I want to get like geopolitical implications of like economic decline. Maybe like economic decline, I can't spell, line impacts minus, I cannot spell, poverty, but I really want politics, right? So this is only going to show me things that do talk about economic decline, do talk about politics, and do not talk about poverty. So if I'm looking for like the political implications of economic decline, just using this basic like Google keyword search is going to be really useful and something that will like really help you save time if you're looking for more obscure evidence.
And then also using debate.cards for like basic impact stuff is helpful.
Yeah.
And then also like biases, when you're reading, make sure you're keeping track, like you're realizing like what perspective you're going into it from, and realize how that could, like basic research, like realize how it's impacting what you're reading, how it's impacting how you could be viewing it, things like that. Yeah. Like I think the biggest thing for me, like, was I was trying to make it too complicated. Keep things simple. When you're doing basic research, look up what is a federal jobs guarantee? Why is a federal jobs guarantee good? Why is a federal jobs guarantee bad? Just things like that are very simple, and keep things very, unless you need a very specific card, like Jackson was talking about, like a very specific econ decline card, keep things simple.
Okay.
You can skip
Yeah,
this.
I've decided how to write the, I don't know because this is blocking it. How to write the cases. Yeah. Okay. This is the opposite of what you said.
Yeah, it is.
You made this presentation.
I did. I just made it long. I just made it tired. It was the last presentation I was making. I was like, oh.
Okay.
You should be starting on contentions.
Yeah.
Actually, no. That's wrong. I always write framework first, and then I write contentions. When I'm brainstorming, I go contentions framework. But when I'm writing, I write framework contentions. My bad. No, this is correct. I don't think it matters though.
It doesn't matter. Essentially, come up with your contentions before you start writing. But when you actually start writing, getting a good framework will help you like figure out which evidence to put in your contentions, because you can be like, oh, maybe I should go for this impact because that better supports my framework. And then like when you're writing it, you can tie it back into your value and value criterion. So having a framework that you can refer back to multiple times in your case is really important, just to like remind the judge, hey, at the beginning of the speech, I said this matters and it still does. And I show you how and why my contentions prove that this matters and that you should vote for me. Yeah, framework is a lot about the warranting, as the slide says. You're going to have to explain. You're not going to be like, the value should be morality because morals, and the value should be util because util is good. Next, on to the first contention. You have to explain like what the philosophy is, how it says, and how it applies to the solution, and like why maybe like some implicit argument about why it's better than competing ideas.
I
So,
don't think you have to make it implicit. Like Rajiv read this case, like a case the other day that he wrote, and it was just like prefer this value for 3 reasons, 1, 2, 3. And he
yeah,
did-
but let's say you write like a case that has like a util value criterion. If you want to be like utilitarianism is better than more like deontological frameworks because it provides clear courses of action that a government can take or something, right? Even if you don't know your opponent is going to read a deontological framework, just having that like implicit compare contrast you can refer to later is really helpful. Contentions, you can essentially organize these however you want. Some people are like, observation 1 is this, subpoint A is this, subpoint 1 of subpoint A is this. If you really want to be super organized, that's what you can do. If you just want to be like judge flows straight down the page, I'm just going to read a ton of arguments and they're all going to work together and they're not going to be numbered. I'm not going to have subpoints. That's also fine.
I wouldn't do that. I think a lot of parent judges vote on like take organization into their decisions.
I'll be honest. This is another point where I disagree with Sid. I abhor the use of numbered observation and subpoints in LD.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying you have to number everything. I'm just saying like at the minimum have some contentions to group your ideas.
Yeah, no, don't definitely have contentions.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, because
No.
yeah,
I think the problem that debaters end up having is if they label everything, especially in later speeches like the rebuttals, they'll just be like, on subpoint A, I'm winning because he didn't answer it or whatever. And you end up just repeating your label for the argument instead of the argument itself. So in front of like a less experienced judge, if maybe they didn't write down explicitly subpoint A, or maybe they did, but they're not really hearing an explanation of the argument, by instead referring to things as like what the argument is, by being like, oh, on the impact turn to economic decline, this is what we say. I feel like that will help you, like will force you, the debater, to better explain the warrants of the arguments you're making and the evidence that backs that claim up, instead of just referring to like the argument as like an amorphous whole. That's just my experience with debate.
Yeah, I know.
Is there anything to add?
I think that's more of like a fault of the debater. Like you should always be extending things properly. Like you can like. I think having organization does help you though. When you know how we talked about like crystallizing and like using like ignoring certain arguments essentially. I think having organization can help then. Basically, group things how the argument should be naturally grouped. If there's one big idea which has 2 separate link chains that are independent of each other that support that big idea, make those subpoints. If you have one big argument, but maybe it has like 2 impacts to it, then just say like there's 2 impacts, or like there's 2 impact scenarios to this. So like, just make it as easy to understand as possible.
I'll be honest, a lot of LD just comes down to your personal preference because there isn't necessarily a set format for how to do everything. So write it in a way that makes sense to you, that you feel you can refer to things quickly, and that you feel groups arguments to the point where they're not overgrouped so much that each argument has like its own label that isn't just the argument itself, but you're grouping things naturally, where in the debate round you feel you could say just like you could in a debate round you could refer to a chunk of your case by like a grouping name if you have to. But if you're grouping things arbitrarily and you're never gonna have to refer to that group, then there's no real point to do that. And that final thing, which is to connect all your contentions back to framework, that's probably the most important thing that I see a lot of novice LDers not really doing. They're like, the value should be morality, the value criterion should be util, and then they essentially just read me a PF case after that, which says like why the resolution is bad or why the resolution is good. Making sure that somewhere in your contentions, you're like, hey, even if it's just one line, this supports my value and value criterion because utilitarianism says people buying is bad. And we show you that doing this will cause people to die. Even just a line like that, I think really will set you far ahead of a lot of other novice LDers, just by showing that you understand the interactions between framework and contentions and not essentially having 2 entirely separate debates, but recognizing how they interact with each other.
Yeah, I think having one line is definitely, that one line is so important. Like, it's not like important, but it's so helpful. And it, yeah. Shoot, I was going to say something. I completely forget. Okay, yeah.
How to cut cards. We talked about this already. We talked about that already. We didn't really talk about what to avoid. So power tagging, if you're going to go the policy route where you have the tagline, which is that short summary of the card, then the author name, and then the full evidence itself. Power tagging is when essentially the tagline just lies about the contents of the card. An example of this that Rajiv and I like to make fun of is when we went to camp after my freshman year. There was a topic, the policy topic that year was about immigration reform. And there was a card, I think it was BBC 13, which it was tagged, Syrian refugees negatively affect wherever they go. Like that was the tag of the card. And the actual article itself talked about how Syrian refugees had like put strains on the Lebanese school system. It's like, it was this very specific example that only had to deal with like schools being overcrowded in Lebanon, but the card was tagged that they negatively affect wherever they go. So that's an example of power tagging, where you're essentially trying to like extrapolate this claim to like gigantic proportions, when in reality, the evidence just doesn't really say that. Misrepresenting evidence. This is probably more common when you're doing the kind of paraphrase method of LD, where you're not cutting full cards, where maybe an author says something, but then adds like a very important caveat and you just don't include the caveat. That's an example. Generally, don't do this, because if you are caught, it can be really, really bad and you will definitely lose the round. It's also just not worth it. If you can't find someone actually saying what you're trying to say, and you have to like convolute someone else's words into saying it, that's probably because it's a bad argument that not a lot of people agree with, which means it's probably going to be difficult for you to convince the judge that it's like a good argument. And finally, having unnecessary fluff. This is probably easier when you're doing the policy type method of card cutting, where you're able to like de-highlight the fluff and just not read it. If you're doing kind of just the long quotes, if you really just want like the first sentence of a paragraph and the last sentence of the paragraph, you could do like ... and then, you know, skip to the end just to not waste time. Again, a lot of this is just dependent on the method of cards that you're using in your case.
Jackson.
Yes, Praj.
What if like an article like is like it's like neutral and it like includes like for specifically for like federal jobs guarantee? What if they include like both like why it's good and why it's bad? Do you think those articles are credible, or do you think like specifically like would we cut a card but only include the bad stuff if we want to say stuff about bad, or what?
That's generally to be avoided. That's called making a straw man argument, where essentially, let's not use the example of a neutral article. Let's use the example of a negative article. And in the negative article, it says people on the opposing side will say blank, and all you do is cut blank because, I don't know, this negative author made a really good summary of what people on the opposite side are saying. That's generally to be frowned upon, because that's not actually what the author believes. And if you can find someone who disagrees with the subject saying it, you could probably definitely find someone who agrees with the subject saying it, and probably in more detail. You just might have to look a little harder. So yeah, if you were in the example of a neutral article, I try to like take whatever argument they're making and just try to find someone else saying it, because generally that's frowned upon. If your authors disagree with how you're interpreting their work, then that can really come back to bite you in round if your opponent figures that out.
Okay.
Also, yeah, no, like your point being like, well, I've read that article, and the person actually also says like a federal jobs guarantee would be good because it like boosts GDP by like 2%. Like that's the type of thing that you don't want happening, because then you seem dumb and stupid and bad.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Mouse.
Mouse. Okay, mouses are very helpful. Like cutting cards with a mouse versus a trackpad makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. You don't need to bring it in rounds, but when you're cutting, being able to pilot things quickly.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, I was thinking I had to use a mouse on my old computer because my trackpad was bad.
Example. What to do? What?
Okay. Example. This was an example of cutting cards. So, in case you want to cut cards during, wait, Jackson, I'll just stop your screen sharing and I'll pull it up because.
Okay.
Yeah. So in case you want to cut cards like the way that we're talking about with like the policy style. So the way I would do it is, example, okay. So if we go into, so, okay, so if we went to card cutter, let me just make this small and pull it out the way. Okay, so this is the tag that I have, put that there. This is the author. This is the article title, organization. Yeah, I'm just not going to put that in there. Date. Okay, there's no URL in this site. Okay, it's fine. I didn't know why there wasn't a URL for this, but they must have just not put it. Yeah, and then text block. Okay, so the card is, so now you have all this nice fancy formatting. What I would do with this, also like a big thing, I think Jackson told me this like freshman year, was make everything that you read size 14, because it's a lot easier to read stuff when it's bigger and you don't have to worry about space on a computer. Like,
Yeah, I might not go that big, but
yeah, my bad. Oh wait, no, my tags are typically 16, that's what.
I don't know. I just use whatever verbatim default is.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so like, I would, when I'm doing it in Google Docs, I would do it just like I would do it verbatim. I would go through and I would underline anything that I want for the card, and I would also bold it because create some separation.
Are you planning on highlighting that later?
Yeah.
Here, do you want me to do a cutting a card example?
Oh well, I was just showing it in Google Drive.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll show it in verbatim. Verbatim is essentially a add-on for Microsoft Word.
Jackson, because
Yeah.
nobody's using verbatim.
Proj might be.
For like, yeah, but Proj, you know how to use verbatim, right?
Yeah, I don't know specifically how to cut cards, but verbatim is like so thing.
Proj, I can't hear you.
Oh, it's weird. I don't know what. I have to like hold it up to the thing. I kind of do. Enough. I can just ask Jackson if I need
Oh,
anything.
okay, we're good then.
I might
Okay.
I might just do it for like specifically LD on Google Docs, because Microsoft Word is on the other computer, and this is like my like personal computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you
Okay,
able to get
so-
Word on that computer?
It already has Word. Like
Oh.
it's my dad's like company laptop, and it already has Word, and that's what I normally use in debate.
Oh, what are you on right now?
My personal laptop. By personal, yeah.
Do you
But-
not have Word on your personal laptop?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I just use the other one. Everything's on there. Verbatim. Search
So
everything.
after I would go through underlining stuff, I would go through all the stuff that's not underlined and shrink it down to size 8 because this is like the stuff that's not important. Okay, and then okay, we'll just go into the oh, okay, never mind. So maybe I just want the impact of Nukes. Also, I like to highlight in green because if you highlight in yellow, if you're working at night and you use like a blue light filter on your laptop, then the yellow disappears. So, yeah.
Highlighting is completely personal preference. I like yellow and aqua. Sid likes green. Some people like purple.
Yeah. When I was prepping for Jackson, when I was looking at Baudrillard K, it was
Mhm.
Comic Sans highlighted in purple.
That sounds like Baudrillard to me. But yeah, Sid, do you want to just give a quick review of the schedule we're going through tomorrow and next week?
Yeah. So just for this, like you'd see, like I kind of just like got the essential stuff, the impact of nukes on the probability safe pursuits chemical weapons, and then I would do the rest. But this is just an example. Yeah. So schedule wise, so what everybody has to do tonight: do basic research on the topic, read your article, read basic articles on both sides, and then come tomorrow with one contention idea for AF, one contention for NEG. Because we're going to be doing the whole brainstorming thing, so hopefully with everybody's list, and then everybody just talking about the topic, we should be able to get it done tomorrow. And then over the weekend, everybody has to write one contention. And next week, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be splitting up everybody into 3 groups. And then, so Jackson will have a group of 2, Rajiv will have a group of 2, and I'll have a group of 2. And we'll be working with all of you on case writing. We'll be doing practice rounds throughout the week. And then also what we'll do is we'll have these 2 hours in the morning, but then at night, we're going Jackson, hopefully this is fine with you, because Rajiv and I were talking about this last night. We're going to do like office hours for 30 minutes to an hour at night. So like during the day, if you guys are writing and then you need like some feedback on some stuff at night, you can always ask us. And we'll just be doing those on Discord. And then, so we're going to have a contention due Monday. Monday, Jackson and I are going to have a demo debate on the topic. Tuesday, and then Monday night, you guys have to write a framework for your contention or contentions that you wrote over the weekend. Tuesday, in your groups of 2, you're going to have a practice debate. And then Tuesday night, you have to write contentions for the other side. Wednesday night, you're writing a framework. Thursday, you're doing another practice debate. Friday, we have our tournament. So yeah, I know it's definitely like it seems intimidating to be writing contentions or framework in one night, but that's the best way. Like I remember last year at camp, we wrote, we had to write a case in 4 days, but then one of our lab leaders came because he was in China, and he was like, okay, now you're writing a whole case in a day, deal with it. And we had to, and it definitely helped like get better at research. So yeah, it helped a lot. Just getting used to researching, writing cases. And we may possibly do that Tuesday night. Tuesday night, you may just have to write a whole case with framework, but we'll just see how it goes.
Yeah, we're not going to overburden you guys with work. We're just going to try to make sure you get some experience in for the tournament.
If you don't cry, you're doing something wrong. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I've never cried except when I had to watch you around.
Oh yeah, that was such a bad moment.
Do we have any last questions?
Time.
I think.
I want to hear about Sid's last round or whatever. I want to hear.
Oh, that was my last round of last season. It was my worst round I've ever debated.
It was so bad. The problem was that the other debater was, no offense, not very good. Not like very
Actually,
high level.
Stop recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, we're done for today. This is a story. This is a story time. You
Yes,
can
I
leave if you
story
want.
time.